Hi guys, welcome back to Hairdryer Treatment. I'm absolutely buzzing to tell you we are joined by a very special guest tonight. Of course, we have got Luke Chadwick with us. I'm really excited for this one. I'm going to introduce you first, Luke. How are you doing?
Yeah, very well. Thanks for having me on.
Absolute pleasure to have you on. Appreciate you taking the time out. And Meg, bless her, is sat in the car, about to go football training. Appreciate you joining us, Meg. How are you doing?
I'm okay. I was going to say I apologise to everyone because I'm not in my right kit for ladies in red. I'm in my football kit. I'm sat in the car at the training ground, and as soon as this finishes, I've got to go shoot to training. So apologies if you hear any cars coming past, or you see the lights behind me.
It's fine, Meg. It's fine. And Emma, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm not bad. Just tired from work, but what's new with me?
I know the feeling. Working with kids all day is tough. Obviously, we both do that for a living. But Luke, obviously, we're going to talk a bit about your career. We're going to talk about the current United side as well. But first, I want to discuss, because a lot of people may not know, like, I know you obviously with the youth at United. You're originally from Cambridge. So I just wanted to ask you, like, how did the whole Manchester United situation fall about?
I was playing, believe it or not, I was scoring a lot of goals when I was a little kid, and I got quite a reputation in the local area. I signed for Arsenal as an under-13 player, and then as an under-14 player, I was scouted to go up to Manchester United for a trial, went up there for a week, and after that I signed for the club. And the second I went up to Man United, I fell in love with the place, really. The environment, the history of it all. You were made to feel so welcome as a young child. It was incredible feeling going up there, and to sign for them was obviously something I'm hugely proud of at such a young age.
It's mad, isn't it? I mean, I couldn't imagine being that young and being surrounded by the legends that you were surrounded by as well. It must have been quite an intimidating place for you, being so young.
Yeah, it was incredibly daunting going up there. I was a real quiet, shy boy. I never really liked going to Arsenal to go training. It was like an hour from my house. I used to make up I had a headache or a tummy ache or something, so I didn't have to go sometimes. But the second I went up to United, I was obviously really nervous, but hugely excited at the same time. And the second I went up there, I felt so at home immediately, part of the family that the club is. It's such a wonderful organisation. It's something that I'll be forever grateful for, and the lessons that I learned at the club, not just football lessons, but life lessons as well.
Yeah, obviously, am I right in saying? Go on, Meg.
You talk about being such a young age. At what point did you think I'm going to make it? I'm going to put everything into this, and I'm going to become a Premier League player. And obviously, that was the dream. But I know that it's so many people's dream. Really, it's just a handful of people, isn't it, in terms of who actually makes it? At what point, obviously, at such a young age, did you decide that was it? That's what you wanted to do?
I think in terms of playing for Manchester United, I don't know if I ever really believed I'd play there, but from probably the age of 9 years old when I started playing, and I realised that I was better than the other kids around me, that I'd never had any doubts that I'd become a professional footballer. I think a big reason for that is where I was brought up, in a real quiet little village where there weren't that many good footballers around. I was so much better than everyone else. I'm not saying that in an arrogant way, but I just never had any doubt, because I had such joy and success at a young age that I just always assumed that would be my career. I certainly didn't have any other pathways ahead of me. As soon as I signed for Man United, I probably down tools at school, as it were, and sport. I was sort of made it now that I'd signed for Manchester United. So I never really had any doubts that I'd become a footballer one day, but to have played games for Manchester United was probably beyond my wildest dreams as a teenager and a kid growing up.
It's literally a dream. Go on,
just Luke, so playing for Manchester United, you've done two things that us Man United fans would love to do. You scored against Leeds. I know someone just mentioned that. And you got a red card. You got sent off against Liverpool. Like, what was it like doing those two things?
It was certainly better scoring against Leeds than getting sent off against Liverpool. I remember probably my best memory at Manchester United was scoring the goal against Leeds. Obviously, it was such a big game. It was such a fierce rivalry, and to score at Ellen Road, it was fortunately the goalkeeper dropped it right in front of the goal, so even I couldn't miss from there. And I just remember my eyes sort of lighting up and tapping it into the goal, and then running off like a absolute lunatic. I couldn't believe what I'd just done, really. I think in terms of the sending off against Liverpool, I don't know why I was that far back and I was in a situation to get sent off. But I remember just walking back to the dressing room, and the crowd was sort of clapping me, and I didn't know what to do because I felt so scared when I got back in the dressing room what the manager would say to me at the end of the game. So I just remember walking a real nervous walk off, and then just sitting in the dressing room waiting for the players to come back in. I think Yap Stam might have got injured, and he was already in the dressing room. And he said, "Oh, what's happened?" I said, "Oh, I've been sent off." I don't think he could quite believe it, because I certainly weren't the sort of player that would get sent off in a game. So it was a scary moment getting sent off against Liverpool. But fortunately, I didn't get too much of a telling off when the players and the manager came back in.
I was just about to say, what did the manager say to you? I'm quite interested there to see what that reaction would have been. Being called hairdryer treatment, is one thing that I'm definitely interested in. Did you get the hairdryer treatment that day?
No, I didn't. I didn't get the hairdryer treatment that day. I think he was. He had the ump with everyone else just as much as he had the ump with me, because we were really poor on the day and lost. It's obviously a bad one when you lose to that lot, and it was a somber dressing room. But I think I missed out on the hairdryer that day, fortunately for me.
Love that. BSG, thank you for the super chats. I just need to support the channel. Great to see it growing rapidly. Thank you for your support. We appreciate that. And Adam, thank you to you as well. Hi, Sophie, Emma, Megan, and Luke. Hit the like button, everyone. Love this show, and good to get Luke on. Definitely, guys, hit that like button, please. We appreciate your support. And I just saw a really good question as well. Pure Wolverine said, "What is it like hearing 75,000 people cheering you out of the tunnel?" That must be special, Luke.
Amazing. I think maybe you don't appreciate it as much at the time, but looking back now, the feeling of, I remember my first team debut, I came on in the Premier League against Middlesbrough after about 89 minutes, and we were winning 1-0. And I played the game. I think I touched the ball twice and was just running around as fast as I could. Didn't really have a clue what I was doing. But being in that atmosphere, I remember for the next 2 weeks, I just had a massive grin on my face, because as a kid growing up, just 1 minute to play for Manchester United would have been enough. To have achieved that, it was like such a buzz to play in front of that crowd and be on that pitch. It was I can't really do it justice trying to put it into words, but the feelings were incredible.
Talking about the tunnel and then obviously Old Trafford as a whole, is there anything that even comes remotely close to Old Trafford? Is there any other ground that you played at you thought, wow, this is a special ground? I know Old Trafford will probably be up there with the first, but is there anywhere else that you played that you thought this is a special moment as well?
I think Old Trafford would always be the best one, the one where you remember the most, because it's where you spent the most time. I remember coming on against Liverpool at Anfield, and you can sort of feel the hostility towards you, but the fans feel like they're sort of right on top of you because it's such an enclosed environment. Obviously, the Leeds game as well, when I played in that game, you could really notice the hostility towards the club. Obviously, if you're not a Man United fan, most other people dislike them a lot, but so you get that hostility at all the grounds you go to. I'd probably say the ones in the atmosphere where that really stood out would have been Anfield and Ellen Road.
Yeah, I mean, this Abdul says Luke Chadwick has more Premier League medals than Stevie G. It's just mad, the fact that you've got a Premier League medal. I mean, obviously talking to him off camera regarding your Premier League medal, but is that something that, like, to have that in your possession, like, you must feel like truly blessed? I mean, that's something that most young kids would be dreaming of now, like to finally get a Premier League medal. As a kid growing up, what advice would you give? Because obviously you said you always had belief in your own ability in that, but to young football players, I know you're involved in a bit of coaching yourself. Emma, I know obviously your little girl plays, Meg's playing. To kids in a grassroots level now, like, what's the best advice you could give them from your experience?
I think for me, the biggest piece of advice that I could give for any young person playing football is to love what you're doing, to progress in anything and be successful in anything. You've got to love it and cherish every time you do it. There's obviously, throughout a football career, there's plenty of ups and plenty of downs, but what gets you through all that is thinking about them young days when you was a kid and you're just playing the game for pure enjoyment. And the more that you can do that, the further you'll go. And even if you don't go any further, you're still loving what you're doing, so it's still completely worthwhile. So in my opinion, it's just all around loving the game and loving what you're doing.
Love that. Making the most of it. Time flies when you're having fun, definitely. Diego, thank you for that. He says, at present, Premiership players are having to perform without being able to have time off with their families. The schedule is mental and physical. Do you think the FA, UEFA, FIFA should look at this? So in terms of, obviously, COVID has affected a lot of things. We know that. And we mentioned fans. Obviously, no fans allowed in, the difference that makes to the tempo of the game, for example. What's your thoughts on that? I mean, Christmas time obviously is always a hectic time anyway, but it seems it's that way all the time at the moment for footballers. You've been there yourself, spending a lot of time away from the family. Does that have an effect on you as a footballer?
Yeah, it's obviously tough, but when you're a footballer, you're in this bubble, as it were, where football is everything, if you know what I mean. It takes over your life. It's not a complaint. Now I've finished, I obviously appreciate the time that I've got with my family and that sort of thing. But I don't think it'd make that much difference to the players. I'm sure they probably prefer playing games to training all the time. But that is the life of a footballer. It encapsulates everything, and everything is built around football. Your life is football because that's what you do. And it is, particularly at that top end, as a Premier League player, as a Manchester United player, everything is football. That is your employment, your job, but it's also your passion. So you put everything you can into doing that and doing it as well as you possibly can.
Yeah, I can see that, to be fair. It takes over your life, especially like I mentioned, how many fixtures you have, how hard, how often you have to train. And ultimately, it's your livelihood, isn't it? Football is your life. It provides for your family. Like, I completely get that. Adam says, hey, Luke, who was the best United player you have ever played with? That's a tough question, that.
Yeah,
so I guess to narrow it to one.
It is tough, but I think I'll always answer the same. And I'm pretty sure most people that played with him would say the same. But Paul Scholes was the best that I've ever seen in terms of training every day. The things that he could do, he was an absolute genius. He had like eyes in the back of his head, like that girl off The Exorcist, where he could spin his head all the way around. He just knew where everyone was. He just could play off one touch, two touch, shoot, maneuver the ball. He was an absolute joy to play with, and obviously played with I was lucky enough to play with some absolutely wonderful players, but I'd say that Scholes was just a little bit ahead of everyone else.
I don't think I've ever heard Scholes be compared to The Exorcist girl. That will go down. I'm noting that one. That's the thing I'm going to take away from this.
Scholes is my idol. Like, Paul Scholes, you saying that, like, Scholes is my favourite player, like, of all time. Absolutely love him. He was just so special. What's your thoughts on, obviously, he's temporarily looking after Salford at the minute. Could you see him being a future manager or coach?
Yeah, I think he went in at Oldham and he started quite well. It's probably, when I look back now, the ones where you think he could be a manager was the likes of Roy Keane, Gary Neville, because they were so vocal in the dressing room. But at the same time, I do think the game's changed to a certain extent, where it's not all about shouting and screaming anymore. It's about dealing with individuals, dealing with their personalities and their feelings, and managing people as much as it is managing a football team. So Paul Scholes, with the wealth of experience he's got, I'm sure if it's something that he wants to do long term, that it's something he could be hugely successful in.
Luke, you obviously played with some fantastic players, and you know, with our glory years. What do you make of Manchester United at the moment, with the negativity, you know, the poor performances? What do you make of it all?
Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough time for Manchester United. It's a tough time for their fans. Obviously, at a club like Manchester United, you're expected to go and win every game and go and win the league every year, which is hard at the moment because there's been so much changeover at the club. As soon as Sir Alex left, the success could never continue like it did with someone else in charge, because he'd built such an incredible, well, the whole club really, it weren't just a team. Sir Alex was the whole football club, and it was always going to be tough. Like, David Moyes more or less had a impossible job really from following Sir Alex. And then obviously Louis van Gaal came in, Jose Mourinho came in, that you look at fantastic managers, but maybe a quick fix that I don't think works at Man United because of the history of the club, because of the culture at the club, of what's been built there. It needs a long-term project. And I do genuinely think that Ollie is someone that could be successful long term, but needs to be given time to get everything right. I know he's been there a fair while now, but it's still a work in progress. It's not going to happen immediately. And I think, in my opinion, Ollie should be given time to build that same, probably not at the same level as Sir Alex give it, but in the same mould as what Sir Alex done to build the club up from the foundations upwards, to get that same environment that was built there years ago with Sir Alex in charge.
There's a good question from Doug here. He says, if Luke Chadwick was still playing, how much would he be worth in today's transfer market? Well, you're going to blow your own trumpet here. Are you going to be like 100 million? Or what you reckon?
No.
The transfer market's crazy, isn't it now?
Yeah, well, I once got signed from Stoke. Norwich signed me from Stoke, and I think it was 220 grand. So I'd probably say 225 grand would be about right now.
I like how precise you were about that one as well. Some thought went into that.
I'll give myself an extra 5 grand.
Why not? Why not? You've earned it. Someone's asked your opinion on Paul Pogba in the chat. Obviously, we all know the potential of Paul Pogba. He gets a lot of stick as well. Why do you think that is? Do you think it's because we have such high expectations of him as a player? Obviously, he's a World Cup winner as well. I mean, what's your thoughts on Paul Pogba, and do you think that long-term he'll stay at United?
I hope so, and I hope that he's a successor. I think Paul Pogba gets a lot of stick because of how he is and his style of a player. The style of the player that is, because he's really tall, taller than the average centre midfielder. He's quite languid in his movement and that sort of thing. And I think it can be perceived that he's not putting a shift in. I think we spoke earlier about Ollie building relationships with people. And I remember when we came back from lockdown and United were absolutely flying, and Pogba was brilliant. He was electric at the time, and he was really moving a lot better and putting a real shift in his defending. And I think when Pogba's in the right frame of mind, I don't think there can be many better midfielders in the world, or there isn't, because he's won the World Cup. So I think when his mind's right, and it's up to Ollie and obviously up to himself to get that, I think he can be a massive, massive player for Manchester United. And I do truly believe that he will come good.
I hope you're right. I hope you're right. Meg, what's your thoughts on Paul Pogba? Because obviously there was links that he's been flirting with Real Madrid and whatnot. We've seen it all before. But like I said to Luke, we all know his potential. Do you think he's going to stay long-term at United? Do you want him to?
I'd love him to. I agree with Luke. I think on paper, he's one of the best footballers, midfielders in the world. Right back at the Project Restart, I said once he'd obviously come back from injury that I'd have him in the team from the off compared to who we had. I just thought he is just excellent on the ball. I love the way that when he doesn't even have the ball at his feet sometimes. When the ball's being played to him, he kind of steps in and rolls the player so easily. He makes it look so simple when he does it, especially when he's passing as well. The way that he passes the ball, he makes it look simple, and we can spray a ball from the middle of the pitch out to either side. So for me, I hope he does stay at least another couple of seasons before he moves on, just so we can really get the best out of him. Because I think we've obviously brought him back to Manchester United for a reason. He wanted to be at Manchester United. So I hope we can really get the best out of him now.
Yep. Emma, what's your thoughts on Paul Pogba?
I love Paul Pogba. I think he's an absolute class player. But he's inconsistent. On his day, he can be absolutely amazing. And when he doesn't want to put a shift in, he won't put it in. And he dilly-dallies on the ball. He loses the ball too many times. And that's the Paul Pogba I don't want. I want the Paul Pogba when he's on his game and he's throwing those crosses in, he's scoring, he's assisting. That's what I want from him. And lately he just looks like he just can't be bothered. And I just wish that he just gets that get up and go and, right, I'm Paul Pogba, I want this. I want to win this game. That's all I want from him.
A lot of people are obviously saying he should be dropped for our game against Newcastle. For me, I think he'll start. And I'm just hoping that he shuts the haters up and we get that performance like you mentioned, Emma, that we know we can provide it. Mm. And I'm sure Paul Pogba, like you said, Meg, I'm sure he wants to be United. I don't think it is the fact that he can't be arsed. I don't think it is the fact that he's throwing his arms around. However, I agree that he has been inconsistent. We said Bruno coming in may complement him. I'm looking to see if they're going to play together, Bruno and Pogba. Can they play together? And I think that's an interesting one because post-lockdown, you mentioned Luke, he was on fire. We were on fire. But when we're not playing so well, this is where we want the leader side of Paul Pogba to come out, to grab the game by the scruff of the neck. And I think that's what we're lacking, that leadership at the minute at United. Josh has asked a good question. He says, Luke, you had to deal with a lot of trolls and unfair comments towards you. I think it's getting worse with social media. Obviously, nowadays he's referring to. Any advice for dealing with negativity from trolls? What advice would you give? Obviously, us as ladies talking about football, we have our fair share of trolls as well. And we often say, ignore it, don't pay them any attention. But what advice would you give to someone who's suffering?
Yeah, I think it's a really hard one because no one knows how it makes anyone else feel, really. So I think that makes it so hard. It's so easy to say ignore it, but you can't a lot of the time, can you? If someone says ignore it, you look at it more and it makes you feel worse. I think my biggest bit of advice, and obviously me saying it doesn't make it any easier, but when you are feeling down, feeling low, whatever the reason for that be, usually the best way to handle that is to talk about it and try and be open and honest with your feelings and let people know how you're feeling. Of course, that's not easy, is it? You can't just go and do that. But I think the more that you try and do that, the more that you push yourself out your comfort zone. Look, say this someone's wrote this about me and it's made me feel like this, and it gets easier and easier. Like anything, the more that you do it. So in terms of dealing with it, just try and talk about it and say, someone said this about me and this is how it's made me feel. And there's always support if he is there for you to listen to someone, and things get easier, don't they? Once you are willing to talk about the problems in your life, they do tend to disappear a lot quicker than if you keep it all bottled up inside.
Yeah, I completely agree. Sharing is caring. Problem shared is a problem half. That's what people say, isn't it? Yeah. Richard, that's a good question. He said, "Hi Luke, do you think that any of the current United players would have started in the team during your time?" So obviously we've mentioned some of the characters you've played with, some of the legends. Is there anybody at the moment in the current United team who you think could start?
That is a tough question. I think the team or the squad that I was around with United was potentially one of the best in the club's history. Obviously, it was just after the treble winning season, and it was full of world-class players. I think in terms of mixing it up a bit, obviously back then it was always a 4-4-2 formation. So the one that you'd probably think maybe had a chance would be Bruno if he changed the system and played a bit of a more of attacking midfielder. But I think there'd be fantastic options there that would be in and around that squad. And I think there's the likes of Rashford, Greenwood that could potentially have a career at United that would get them into that team at the moment. But I'd say at this moment in time, it'd probably be hard to be in the starting 11 every week for any of the current squad. But I do think there's potential there for in years to come to say, yeah, he could have got in that squad, in that team, sorry.
Yeah, Bruno, obviously, he's come in, he's had a great impact, hasn't he? Yeah, he really has. And I think he looked a bit leggy, to be fair, towards the end of last season. There's rumours this week that he's had a falling out with Solskjaer. I don't believe that in the slightest, to be honest. But obviously, there's always rumours circling United. That's what happens. But we mentioned the lack of leadership in the current United. That's what we feel. We feel that we're lacking that. You played with one of the best leaders, if not the best leader we've had with Roy Keane. Now, sum up Keane. We see him as a pundit, obviously, and we hear how abrupt he can be, how sharp he is. But to play with him, what was he like?
He was the ultimate captain, an incredible leader, drove standards so much where I remember coming back, I was on loan at Antwerp in Belgium, and I came back and had my first training session with the first team and gave a sloppy pass away. And then Roy added gave me the biggest, I won't say the word, biggest telling off that I've ever had. And I thought, flipping heck, this is proper now. But at the same time, a hugely supportive man as well, like off the pitch with the young players, with everyone. He'd always try and help you out if you had problems. He was an incredible leader. It was you didn't want to be on his team in training and lose, that's for sure, because he wouldn't speak to you for the rest of the week. But he was he drove that team so much, and he was a huge part of the success of the club was because of the standards that the manager and himself drove throughout the rest of the squad.
So, sorry.
Well, no, carry on him.
I seen you tweet the other day your was it how it started and how's it going with Alex Ferguson. I just want to ask you, like, what was he like as a manager, like behind closed doors?
He was not just a manager, he was just one of the most incredible men I've ever met in my whole entire life. He had every single person at the football club pulling in the same direction to make that club successful. I mentioned earlier that I went up for a trial at Man United as a 14-year-old boy. By the time I got home on the train, he'd phoned my mum up personally to ask if I'd sign for the club, which obviously once you hear that as a 14-year-old, there's only one place you're going to sign. But it weren't just me that he'd do that for. He'd do it for all the young players. I was at the club as a first-team player in the canteen at Carrington, and there'd be under 10, under 11 academy boys there. And the manager would know every one of their names. He'd know their parents' names. He'd know a little detail about them. And he had a way of making you feel so special. And you wanted to work harder than you thought you possibly could for the man. And that went from the first-team squad throughout the club. He'd treat the kit men and the dinner ladies with the exact same respect he'd treat Roy Keane or Ryan Giggs. I can't explain sort of the effect that he had on that football club. He just ran the whole club from top to bottom, and he was an absolute genius. And the success that he had I don't know if that'll ever be repeated.
What a guy. What an absolute guy. I mean, you mentioned managers. That was similar to the question I was going to ask Emma, to be fair.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's good. I'm glad you asked it. I've all said, Luke, your opinion on Roy Keane. Obviously, we just touched on that. But I want to ask you about Roy Keane as a manager, because obviously he's controversial. But like you say, he gets the best out of people. His expectations are very, very high. Do you think he would be a good manager in future? I know obviously he's been involved with Ireland and whatnot, and at club level he's been involved. But do you think that he'll go back into that? He's been in punditry, like I say now, and he's shown how firm he can be. Do you think he'll go back into management at some point?
I'm not sure. Obviously, he had an incredible start to his managerial career at Sunderland and got them promoted to the Premier League. Didn't have as good a time at Ipswich. I think your sort of priorities change as you get older. He seems to be having a really good time on Sky Sports at the moment, and perhaps that's the sort of pathway that he wants to take. But I'm sure with his huge knowledge and experience that he could be a really successful manager in the future. But whether that's something that he wants to do, I don't know.
I love him though. I do love him. I know that he would scare the life out of me if he was my manager or my teammate. He would scare the life out of me. But I just love listening to his opinion. He doesn't hold back. And Evra's another one, to be fair. Patrice Evra, obviously, he's a pundit now on Sky. Well, he still is. Apparently, he terminated his contract last time he was live on there. But yeah, he's a pundit on Sky. I mean, Evra, his positivity, it's just infectious, isn't it? And what a player he was for United. I mean, Patrice Evra, I saw his video yesterday where he's singing "I love this game" again. He's another example, isn't he? Like he gets what United is about. You can see he loves the club, and that was his home, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think that's what the club Manchester United does. I think the vast majority of players that play there and spend time at the club, it'll be the club that they love playing for the most because of what it's like there, because of the culture and the environment that's there. So obviously Patrice Evra shows when he's on the telly that huge passion that he's got for the club and that huge disappointment when things aren't going as well as it did when obviously the part of the amazing team that he was part of as well. So it's always good to see that human side of people when they're working on the telly. But hopefully he didn't tear up his contract and he's still getting paid for the rest of the season.
I hope so. I'll miss him if not. I will miss him. But we wanted to do like teammates that we used to do on Sky. We're going to ask you about your United, obviously teammates. So everyone you played with at United. We're going to ask you a few random questions, and I'll start you off. I saw someone asked it in the chat as well. But your time at United, who would you say the biggest prankster was, or the funniest in the dressing room?
I'd say there was probably two. The two jokers. The main jokers when I was there would have been Ryan Giggs and Nicky Butt. They were certainly the two that were always up to fun and games and a bit of mischief. Love
that. You know, I've heard as well that Paul Scholes is a bit of a prankster. I don't know how true that is, because he's quite obviously secluded, isn't he? Is it true that he was a bit of a joker?
He had a really dry sense of humour. He was quite a quiet lad, but he certainly knew how to have a good time as well, and had plenty of laughs with the rest of the squad.
Love that. I'm guessing you went out on a few nights out. Obviously, I've seen a few pictures where the old fashioned sense back in the day. Who would you say was the worst dresser out of like all the United players? Obviously, who was the worst? Who had the worst fashion sense?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think if you ask the question to others, I'd probably be right up there. I'd say that picture that I saw the other day, you'd have to put Wes Brown right up there with the outfit that he had on that evening.
That's the picture I was referring to. Sorry.
We obviously seen that Paul Pogba is the dancer in the dressing room at the moment. Like back then, who was your dancer in the changing rooms?
I think when we went out, the best dancer was Giggsy. He certainly had a few moves. He would have been the one that was first on the dance floor.
I didn't expect
York
that.
As well.
I did not expect that either. I did not expect that.
That was a good dance. Yorkie as well. He threw a few shapes about.
I was picturing Giggsy doing the robot. Like I never would have thought he'd have been doing that. That's the image I've got in my head. Doing a crouchy. So we said obviously the worst dressed. Who would say had the most fashion and the most style?
Oh,
it's got to be David Beckham, innit?
Yeah, to be fair, Beckham's got to be up there. He used to have his fashion sense was a bit probably ahead of its time at times with the old sarong and all that sort of thing.
I was going to say
Beck's always looked the best on a night out.
The hairdos as well. The hairdos.
Who worked the hardest on the training pitch when you were there?
That training sessions were, I've never seen intensity like it. The whole sort of work rate of the whole squad was incredible. I'd probably say the one that I'd set apart would be Roy Keane, sort of leading from the front and sort of everyone trying to follow him and stay at his work rate. But in terms of like work rate, I've obviously went down the leagues and played for many football clubs where work rate was questioned at times by the staff, by the management. I can't say that ever would have happened at Manchester United because the standards were so high and the work rate was always incredibly intense. But I'd probably set Roy Keane apart, and David Beckham as well was an incredibly hard trainer.
Who would you say, obviously we talk about in the dressing room, I'm guessing everyone is quite close. So who would you say the closest person you were to at United? So I'd say that your best friend as such at United. Like who was the one you were closest to?
I think when I was there, with the young lads used to stick together. So I used to knock about with Wes Brown, John O'Shea, Roy Carroll. We used to stick together and try and stay out of the way, stay out of trouble with the main players.
I always think when you say O'Shea, that little nutmeg he did on Figo. I bet he spoke about that forever, didn't he? That little nutmeg was class. Oh,
he's an incredible footballer. And brilliant career he had as well at United and beyond.
Yeah, he's just so versatile, isn't he? And I think he's proved that throughout his career. Like he can play anywhere in defence. Like you say, just a good footballer. And I think they're rare to come by nowadays. Just somebody who all around is just a very tidy football player. One of them players that you say you consistently get an 8 out of 10 every week. That always have a decent game. I think O'Shea definitely fell into that bracket. But obviously, you've seen a lot of youth come through as well. I imagine. Is there any young players who were around at that time who now you've seen go on to bigger and better things, and you knew they had the ability, you knew they were good enough?
Yeah, I think in terms of at Man United, everyone always sort of knew that Wes was going to be an incredible player. He was always sort of head and shoulders above the rest. John O'Shea came in a bit later, but you could see that. I remember he was the same age as me, and before he came about 3 weeks later, and before he got there, I was able to run around most of the other young lads. But then when Shazy come in, I could never get past him, and he was always looked like he was going to play. I'd say, obviously, playing for the young England teams, the likes of Steven Gerrard, you could see was going to be an incredible footballer and have the incredible career. Maybe not the incredible career that he had, but he was always a top young player. So Ashley Cole as well, playing with him as a young boy, you could see the ability that he had, and you could see that he was going to go a long way in the game.
Cole was questionably one of the, if not the best left back we've had for England. Like he was class, Ashley Cole. I think he was such a good player, and I think he was underrated. I really do, and I know with what he's achieved, you say how he can be underrated, but I genuinely think he wasn't valued. I think he's one of them players that when he's gone, you realise how good he was. I know obviously he was still playing with Derby, and that was when he went to the MLS. But I mean, as a Premier League player, I felt like he went under the radar a little bit. He was such a good player. He was quality. Someone's asked you what your favourite kit was. I'm trying to find it back in the chat. Someone says, "What's Luke's favourite United kit?"
Oh, that's a good one.
Favourite kit was the one we wore in the youth team. It had a little zip, and you could make the collar stand up like Eric used to have that we used to watch. So that was my favourite ever one, the one with a little zip and the white colour.
Love that. Have you still got? Because obviously you said you scored obviously Ellen Road and whatnot. Have you got any boots still at home? Any boots that are like nostalgic or that you just kept because you loved them so much?
No, not really. I'm not really a nostalgic guy. I'll probably regret it when I'm 60, 70, but I never really kept any old football boots or anything like that. I've got loads of shirts from different clubs, but they all just really sit up in the loft, really. I don't have... My old man's got some frame shirts from the clubs that I played for, but other than that, things just rotting away in the loft at the minute.
Yeah, I think I'm like football boots anyway. I'm that player who has new boots all the time, like flashy boots. Meg could back me up on that one. I collect football boots, so I'd definitely be like framing them, making the most out of them. And I know I would, 100%. Last one I wanted to ask from the teammates was who was in charge of the music on match day in the dressing room.
You know what? There wasn't, like back then. Well, I don't think we even had music in the dressing room. We definitely didn't have it on the coach. I think the person that brought it in, it was just at the time when I was leaving. I think Rio was in charge of bringing a bit of music and a bit of life to the dressing room. But I don't think when I was there, the manager, I don't know if he appreciated the music that was put on. But I think Rio was in charge of it when he joined the club.
Love that. I love Rio as well. Another quality player. I know Meg really rates him. Meg plays centre half, by the way. So yeah, she's a big Rio Vidic fan, ain't you?
Yeah.
Twisted has asked how many clubs you played for, Luke. Obviously, we're talking about United. You went to West Ham. I know you went out on loan a few times. Obviously, Cambridge. How many have you played for?
Bloody loads. I don't even know if I can name them all. I went on loan to Antwerp, obviously Man United. Went on loan to Reading and Burnley. Then I went to West Ham. Then Stoke City. Then Norwich. Then MK Dons. And then Cambridge United. So a fair few.
Yeah, but I'm guessing your experience, obviously, when you moved to the likes of Cambridge as well later on in career, the experience of United, like, it's just invaluable, isn't it? Especially to the younger players, like we mentioned earlier, grassroots and that, to be able to feed back some of the stories that you shared with us tonight. And the fact that you had belief in it, I think that's the message you take from this. You have belief in your own ability, you back yourself, and it just proves that possibilities are endless, really, aren't they?
Yeah, I think obviously signing for Manchester United, I owe the club so much in terms of the lessons that I learned in like life lessons more than any football lessons, like the hard work, humility, sort of taking pride in everything you do. That it stood all the young players in good stead. Obviously, there's only a handful of the kids that go up there that actually make it as footballers, but the lessons that they learn in life at the club, it stands them in good stead for whatever their next part of their life will be, whether that's in football or something away from football. So it's such an incredible place to learn both life lessons and football lessons.
Love that. And I'm going to round off just by touching on to the current United team. Got a bad run of games coming up, and a lot of tough games, starting with Newcastle. I've had a bit of a wobble of it. What thoughts, Ollie, do you think, like you mentioned, that you think is right man? Do you think, one, he'll stay in the job after the run of games? And two, where do you think we'll finish this season? And I know it's a tough question, but based on signings that we have made, where can you see United finishing this season?
Yeah, it obviously is a tough run of games coming up. In terms of the Premier League at the minute, without the fans, it's gone a bit mad, hasn't it? United got battered off Spurs, and you got the ump with that. Then you watch the next game and you're absolutely buzzing because Villa put 7 past Liverpool. So the results are so up in the air at the moment. I do think the season, it is still open. There's still going to be freak results. Obviously, consistency is the key for any team to win the league. Yeah, you like to think since the Spurs game, Ollie's had time to regroup, get the team together. Obviously, a lot on international duty, but go into the Newcastle game with new faith that's the team now. The transfer window's over unless someone comes in from the Football League, and just finding a way of getting an 11 out that makes it work and really hit the ground running at St James's Park and then go from there. Liverpool are obviously hot favourites to win the league despite the result the other day, because they look like they've got the strongest squad, but anything could happen. And you look at a Champions League finish is more than possible, really, and anything else would be a success. I think if they could move up to second place from third last season, it still shows development and the club is moving forward. So tough games to come, but that's what Manchester United have got to win, haven't they? That's what the club is. That's what it's been built on over the years.
Exactly, and like you say, I think a lot of it is down to the Newcastle game. Get a good start at the Newcastle game, puts a good step for that tough running that they've got. But still, England are starting very soon. I know that. Of course, I'm not going to keep you here whilst England are playing. I mean, I just want to touch on, we've mentioned a lot of players. I just want to touch on Marcus Rashford before we go. Obviously, off the pitch, he's doing a lot of great things. He's being the ultimate role model. He's being what we'd say we want footballers to be for the younger generation. Marcus Rashford is a special talent. It's special what he's doing off the pitch. And what are your thoughts on what he's doing at the moment?
Incredible. And that goes back to such a young man doing all this good. And I'm sure that comes a lot from being at Manchester United from such a young age. You can see the values, you can see the humanity in him, what he's trying to do. And for him to receive an OBE at the age of 22 years old is nothing short of immaculate. And the young man deserves so much credit regardless of what he achieves on a football pitch, because what he's done off it means so much more than football, really. The fact that he's helped so many families in these incredibly tough times and moving forward as well. On the pitch, I think he struggled a little bit towards the end of last season, but he looks back on it now, scoring some fantastic goals. The goal against Brighton that's what he's all about in it. And when he's positive, running with the ball, and he deserves everything he gets because he is a very special young man.
I agree, definitely. I'm a big Rashford fan. Luke, we're going to round it off. I just want to say a massive thank you for joining us on Hairdryer Treatment. It's been an absolute pleasure to get you on as a guest, and I hope you've enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's been great. Nice to talk to you all.
Thank you. Obviously, we appreciate your time. We know that you're a very busy man. And I want to say, obviously, if you could just shout out where people can find your tag on Twitter and whatnot as well, and just shout out where they can find you on social media.
You got me there. I'm not 100% sure what it's called. I think if you just type my name in the box on the search box, it'll come up there somewhere. So
love it. I think is it Luke FFF, I believe.
It's Luke_FFF.
There you go. There we go. She saved you there, Luke. She saved you. Emma, thank you so much again for taking time. I know you've been at work all day. Thanks for joining us. And obviously, shout out your own channel as well. Let's get people subscribing to yours.
Yeah, my channel is That United Family, and you can find me on Twitter, EmmaEdgar_.
Love that. There's a lot of positivity for you in the chat, Luke. And then Meg, obviously you got training. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I hope you have a good session. Where can people find you?
I know I've got to get off because I've got FA Cup action this weekend, so we've got some prep work to be doing. So you can find me at MeganCan_.
Love that. So guys,
and you can find out whether I win at the weekend.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Obviously, wish Meg all the best. Wish Luke all the best. Emma all the best. Thank you guys for tuning in. Hit the like, hit the sub if you are brand new as well. Drop a comment afterwards and we'll definitely reply. Until then, have a lovely evening. Take care, and we will see you very soon.